Welcome back to another exciting episode of Comic Watchers. Comic Watchers is brought to you by Comic Watch. Comic Watch is your source for all your comics and media news and reviews written by fans for fans. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. I'm your host, Cody, coming to you from Oahu, and here's the rest of our scattered crew today.
Hey, it's Brian from Portland, literally in the middle of traffic jams. I don't know how to mute from this, so I'm sorry if you hear my car or me cussing at random drivers as I go by.
Consider it seasoning and the spice of life. It is me, John Jack.
And I can't even turn my camera back around. That's hilarious.
It's me, John Jack, in Seattle, Washington. I am in a QFC parking lot. Where are you guys?
And I'm Nicholas Osborne, coming once again from Carthage, Texas, the absolute middle of nowhere.
So half of us are at home, half of us are on the road, on their ways home.
Well, I'm
we've got an exciting show for you. Today we're going to be talking about House of X #1, Archie versus Predator Volume 2 #1, and Batman Curse of the White Knight #1. But first, Arby with the news.
I always forget, I always feel like it's a surprise when you call my name. Like, I've never done this show before. Like, oh, is it my turn already? So Spider-Man Far From Home, or whatever it's called, hit the 1 billion mark, which is the highest grossing Spider-Man film to date. We also have some news that just broke out that Hickman actually was behind Xavier's death in Avengers versus X-Men. I didn't read the full article, but I saw it when I was skimming through some news. That's pretty cool. There's a ton, and I repeat, a ton of Marvel news coming from Marvel, because don't forget, last week was the San Diego Comic-Con, which is arguably the biggest Comic-Con that our industry has to offer. Ton of news. Marvel, I think, with the news portion of it, definitely took center stage as they had Hall H. There's a bunch of shows that are announced or that they're showing previews on. You can check a lot of that out at our website, comic-watch.com. I know that they announced the Hawkeye series that will feature, of course, Clinton, or what's his name?
Clint Barton.
Thank you, Clint Barton and Kate Bishop, and there's a whole bunch of stuff. I think Cody ran up everything that was coming up. Check it out on our website. And I know that we're getting 6 or 7 new X-Men titles coming out after House of X. That's pretty exciting if you're an X-Men fan. That's all I can remember.
Yeah, I mean there was so much from the MCU this weekend. We got the casting announcement for Blade.
Jane Thor is coming.
I totally blanked on his name. Cottonmouth from Luke Cage. Well, anyway, we also got confirmation that the Hawkeye in the Hawkeye show will be Kate Bishop, but Clint will play Ronan, reprise his role as Ronan from Endgame.
Mahershala Ali cast as Blade.
Thank you. Oh God, they announced the new Thor film with Natalie Portman being in the film, although they did not actually say that she will pick up the hammer. Everybody's out there reporting Natalie Portman, female Thor. All they said was Natalie Portman will be back in the Thor franchise and that they are adapting elements from the Mighty Thor run, which is, of course, the run where she does pick up the hammer. But come on, guys.
He gave her the hammer on stage, though.
Come on, bro. Just live into the hype. Just give in.
That does not mean that will happen in that film or for a significant portion of that film.
It is super rad because I picked up on eBay last week the What If Jane Foster found the Hammer of Thor, which is What If number 10 from 1978. Literally one day before the price went from going for $5 to $10 to like $100 to $150. So I have a book I paid $7 for that is probably, if I wanted to sell it, which I'm probably gonna hang on to it, might be $120. Which
Nice.
is neat. So that might actually be my all-time biggest like eBay score of like a you know a book that's not worth anything suddenly becomes massively like picking up the first appearance of so and so out of the dollar bin in 2008, and then they get cast in the MCU and that book's worth $100.
Right.
Yeah, so that's exciting.
And yeah, Brian mentioned the first wave of post House of X, Powers of 10 X books, which will include X-Men Excalibur, New Mutants, X-Force, The Marauders, and Fallen Angels. Various creative teams on these crazy team lineups. We'll see where all this goes. But while we're talking about future of X-Men, House of X #1 dropped this week. It was an absolute bombshell on everything that X-Men fandom has come to represent. Jonathan Hickman writing, of course, Pepe Larraz on art. This is very much so a primer on the new status quo, complete with, as we predicted, charts and graphs and definitions.
Just for boys, you are well represented here.
Yeah, yes. So, I mean, basically what we've got is a new world order. The mutants are uniting to forge their own nation. They're being visited by ambassadors from outside who they have extended the offer. Look, recognize us officially as a nation. We will give you these 3 Krakoa-grown flowers that extend the human life by 5 years. One's like a super biotic, and I forgot what the third one did. But I mean, they're like huge medical advances. Am I frozen?
No.
No? Yes? No? Okay. It looked frozen to me, but I wasn't moving either.
I have a question regarding the fruit that extends your life 5 years. How would you know?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a really good question. So you've got all this going on. The humans, of course, are reactionarily backlashing and creating doomsday protocols because the reality is mutants are going to overtake humans just like humans overtook Neanderthals. Right? This is how evolution works. This is coming. So the humans are preparing, and I mean, they've got shield and sword and strike, and also Hydra involved and AIM. The war that is coming is going to be big.
Dogs and cats living together. Craziness.
Total pandemonium. Yeah, so what else is happening in this book? It was such a information dump. It's hard to sort of recap how much is happening here.
We follow a government delegation that has been invited into what eventually is revealed to be the entryway to the mutant society, and then walked around, kind of quickly shown why mutants are superior, which was interesting. And then we also had the interaction between the Fantastic Four and the mutants in the middle of a really clear-cut and obvious mutant super crime. The Fantastic Four took down, it was Mystique, Toad, and Sabretooth, and Scott intervened and basically said you don't have jurisdiction, and took the criminals who. It wasn't made clear whether they were committing a crime on behalf of the mutant nation or whether they were just being protected solely because they were being mutants, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, that is really interesting. And then, of course, Scott gives that parting shot because obviously Franklin Richards is a mutant. As he's walking away, says, when Franklin's ready to have family, he's welcome to come join us. I
was talking with Jim from Weird Science DC and Marvel Comics podcasts. They're fans of us. We're fans of them. And we were both just saying that is one of the more powerful moments in a comic I've read in years.
Yeah.
Just, your son, when he's ready to be with his real family, tell him to head on over. That's messed up.
It is. It was a particularly savage moment. And then otherwise, I mean, it's the X-Men, the mutants. I can't even call them the X-Men anymore because they're not. Like it's everybody. It's the Mutants United. Are taking a stand on a global scale. But at the same time, like they're doing it mostly peacefully. Like they're not, dropping Magneto in Washington D.C. and saying, "Okay, sign the documents, or I'm gonna blow this place up." They're saying, "Sign the documents. We'll give you all these medical advances that you clearly need." So I mean, and then you've got this savage moment with Cyclops. Like, there's a really ominous tone hanging over this whole book, and of course we've got 11 more chapters over the next 11 weeks to kind of hammer out what this real status quo is. And I imagine there's going to be a lot more development. But for now, Nick, what were your thoughts on House of X #1?
Well, I came into it probably like a lot of fans who hadn't read a lot of the current X-Men stuff. I know people here at Comic Watch have been talking about Uncanny X-Men pretty much being a bloodbath, and that made me want to dive in. But also with the new era happening and the status quo reorganization, I kind of just waited for this one to drop, and it turned out to be really interesting. It made me want to read more X-Men, which is more than what the past stuff has done. But probably my favorite thing is the overall societal approach to this book. We started out with a biblical birthing of this next generation of humanity in the mutants, and it starts with Xavier and the two bursting out of the pod beneath this huge tree. It gives you Garden of Eden vibes, and they move on from there, establishing this entire new culture. And every time they built on that, it made me love it even more. Even the small details of Krakoa being able to put signs up so they don't get lost when they're transporting from one location to another. They have their own language. They're hitting all these different notes of establishing a fundamentally sound nation. And it almost gave me Wakanda vibes that they were building it on this resource. It's one of the most effective ways that I think to establish something like this, a concept, is it's built on something they can provide to people of the earth in general, and how they can pretty much buy their acceptance as a unified nation. And it happens to have benefits for them as well, but what they're presenting to humans is 5 extra years of life, the ultimate antibiotic, and one that cures all diseases of the mind. These are huge issues we're facing right now. And I thought that was another aspect of society that they were touching on in medicine. They go from religion to political involvement to medicine to agriculture. They touch on so many different aspects, and it's, like Cody said, it's an information dump. But it was one that I was really here for, like, from the moment it started. It was really, really good shit. And I may not have been able to follow all of the X-Men developments, why Xavier has the big helmet, Magneto's white now. There's all these things that's like, it's not that important. White armor, not, these types of things.
Couches to life, elves to light.
But these types of things.
Didn't claim credit. I did that first.
It didn't impede really the reading experience of the book, though. There wasn't anything in it that felt like it threw me out of the loop or that I wasn't invited to this book. And I thought that was the ultimate success of this one, is any fan of the X-Men, regardless of what they've read in the past decade even, is welcome to this book and welcome to join in on the ride. And it's super exciting. So I'm here for more X-Men, which is kind of cool to say. And despite the fact that there wasn't that much Wolverine in it, I'm sure there's a lot more to come. So got to be excited for that.
Don't worry. Historically, you're well represented on Wolverine books.
That's at least 95% of my X-Men collection. Most of my X-Men experience has been through the lens of Wolverine. So it was fun to see it without him and so involved, but I think he only had one mention in a panel. But
he was in one panel, he was rolling around on the ground like he was covering kids, like he was playing with puppies or something. He's like, ah! Like rolling around in a field of flowers.
which I think is another sign of this being something totally new for the X-Men. I mean, every detail that you look at says this is a new era. And I thought that was probably what Hickman and this creative team did best. It's a great introduction to this new era with X-Men and building a culture around this new island and nation that they're doing was so smart and they did it so well. It was just really great execution, and somebody who hasn't read X-Men as much, you'll find plenty to enjoy with it. John?
So, I liked the book a whole lot. I thought, what? I liked it a whole lot. I did catch a lot of elements of. I was talking to somebody who was saying that Hickman can be a bit formulaic, and there were some definite elements that felt similar to other stuff, such as the divergent nation demanding legitimacy or striving for legitimacy, which was kind of the tone of the first arc of his Ultimates, which. But it's interesting because we're seeing it from the other side of the argument, whereas in the Ultimates we were seeing it from the human global, from the global perspective, with the small nation being the antagonist. In this, the antagonist is effectively the entire human race, which is interesting. Um, I'm curious where this falls time frame wise. Whether it's a few, it seems like it might be a couple years in the future, but it's hard to say. It was interesting, although actually now that I think about it, or now that I'm thinking about it, they do make sure to establish it's in the current time frame because Cyclops congratulates Ben on his recent wedding, which means it is taking place at the current time. Um, which is really interesting, but also leads to one of my major complaints about the issue is that it seems like a lot of events of recent issues might potentially not matter. You do see a birthing matrix at the beginning, so dead characters could be being revived, and that's fine. But at the same time, I mean, that as much as nobody watched that bloodbath that Rosenberg had going on and expected any of that to stick for more than a month or two, it would be nice if deaths that happened literally one issue back weren't already being ignored. I mean, I understand maybe that's not your plan, but it is still a book that, people spent money on and stuff like that, and it's a little bit, it can be a little bit insulting. I mean, just like it's a little bit insulting when a character dies and then, it only lasts a year or so and then they come back. Actually, I can tell you in 2009, I stopped buying all Batman books when they brought Bruce Wayne back from the dead and had him start Batman Incorporated because I was so mad. I was so, I was, I mean, I don't know, 20, but I was so impressed. I was like, this one's gonna stick. They got Dick coming in. He's gonna be Batman. And I thought, things are gonna change. This is a massive paradigm shift. This is so amazing. Only for them to completely undo it about a year and a half later, and at the same time have Bruce Wayne do something so, in my mind, completely and horrendously out of character that it made in taking the Batman name public. And I do digress here, but all I'm trying to say is it's along those lines where it was just it was upsetting, and it made me feel like work I was putting in and money I was putting in didn't matter. And so there's an element of that.
Question on that line though: did you enjoy reading those 22 issues of Uncanny?
Most of them, some of them.
Yeah, like a fair amount of them. I mean, even when I got to the point where it was just like, oh my God, somebody needs to put a leash on Rosenberg. For the most part, like I enjoyed those 22 issues. So I feel like if I enjoyed them, whether or not they exist canonically anymore, I still enjoyed them. It's not a waste. They were still, most of the art was good. The writing was solid. The story was interesting, at least. So I don't know, like from the standpoint of this is a popular culture medium, that is intended for the masses to purchase and consume. I think it did its job.
Hmm.
It didn't
Yeah, I mean,
necessarily.
you're not wrong. I just like I said, stuff that happened within a month back that is already not mattering or showing not to matter. It can be a little upsetting. Um, but all in all, like I said, it's a great issue. It's really good. Um, I do feel like it slows down a little bit in the middle when we're getting into all the nitty gritty up in space, the Ford space station. Like it started it started to get into a stretch. I've been reading. I read a few issues of his Fantastic Four today, just for to help with some frame of reference, and he gets into that with Fantastic Four also, where there will be a page where it's just a lot of technical stuff and stuff, that your eyes just kind of start to glaze over, and I think they're meant to. I think it's supposed to make you feel like it's like technical jargon that you're not necessarily getting, especially when it's like Reed Richards talking to Reed Richards, stuff like that. Like I do understand, and I am so super interested, like you were saying, in the like Stark Industries is working with AIM, is working with Hammer Industries, is working with Shield, is working with Hydra. Like that is incredible. That is so interesting to me. And it's funny though. You gotta wonder, like, is mutant kind providing humanity with a common enemy? So people walk by my car, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, beats this dude's ass!" I got a chair back there. Someone steal my chair. Um, but is mutant kind giving humanity a common enemy? And you know, if they do, is mutant kind actually powerful enough to ward off all of mankind? Like, and that's something I want to know. I will say one thing I loved. I know we mentioned the charts. The chart saying who is an Omega level mutant and the criteria for an Omega level mutant is something I've been asking for what feels like forever. Like, it seemed like there was a time where, and I know it was probably the same people being referred to as Omega level over and over again, but there was a time when I felt like there were just way too many Omega level mutants, and it was getting like really vaguely defined, and it was just a way to establish um, that a mutant was powerful without actually doing any of the legwork. Um, and so it's nice to have like definitive terms of what, an Omega level mutant is a mutant whose power level defines, conventional means of measurement. And Omega level mutants are usually Omega level on some levels, but not others, as in Magneto is an Omega level magnetism, but not technopathy. Likewise, Jean Grey is an Omega level telepath, but not Omega level telekinetic. Stuff like that is the stuff I want to know. Like, you can give me a whole book of that kind of stuff, and I'd be like, oh, interesting, neat, okay. Like, give me rules, lay stuff out, awesome. And so that was cool. Ross asked if anybody translated any of the charts because they have that mutant language on them, and I don't think I've seen anybody having done it yet, and I haven't done the actual legwork myself. But the mutant language, the written language, has been translated. That's how they got the book announcements of the new book roster, was because it was originally released in that mutant language. So somebody did decode that language. I would love to, when they pointed at a sign, what is that sign? Is it something meaningful?
Yeah.
It's deliberately concealed from the ability of humans to read it. Is it something interesting? It could be. It's Hickman. He's not one to throw away a panel like that. So yeah, I guess that's all I got to say about the book.
Yeah, I also quite enjoyed it. We have a quorum now. Like, this was a good book. Any way you slice it. I actually went into this book wanting to not like it. I was fully prepared to walk away from this book saying, nope, I'm done with X-Men. I've read probably, other than from 2011 to like 2016, probably every other X book that's ever been released. In fact, I own most of them. So, I mean, I've got a very safe place in my heart for mutants and the X-Men culture. And I have not been overly impressed with Hickman over the years. And I'm not really particularly ready to reinvent the entire status quo until I read it. And then I read it and I was like, fuck this. I'm on board. I'm on board. You got me. The art's great. The writing is solid. Like JJ said, there's a point in the middle where it slows down, which is just typical Hickman. That's to be expected. But it does something as it slows down. Like, it does establish new rules, new patterns, new expectations. So, I mean, it wasn't wordy for the sake of being wordy. Like, it was mobilized for a purpose. And I thought that was really well crafted. So, I mean, I don't know how this will all play out over 12 issues. I'm not super excited about hardly any of the X books that are coming out of it, which is...
No, none of them look good. It's unfortunate.
Well, the New Mutants looks good. But, and maybe the core team, I don't know. It's hard to say. We don't really know enough about it, but...
I'll be reading... New Mutants is going to be Brisson after the second arc, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll read that. I'll read
Right.
the Hickman books and I'll read the Brisson. I'm not a fan of most of the creators on most of the other... Not like personally, just like there's multiple creators on multiple other books that I'm not a huge fan of. Like, not that I won't check their book out and give it a fair shake, just classically
Right. No, it's
book.
just one of those things. It's a turnoff when you see, somebody who you don't think is the right voice for a particular group of characters,
Like
and
John
you
Romita
know
Jr.
what's so yeah, New Dawn for X-Men. I'm on board. Let's keep doing this thing. I do not think that at the end of the day, Uncanny and Age of X-Men will be completely disregarded. I think that they will find some way to kind of weave that in. And I do think this is a little ways in the future. Just because Cyclops said, congratulations on your wedding to Ben. I mean, when would Ben and Cyclops have had time to even run into each other? Presumably, Cyclops has been out in Krakoa for a minute, helping get everything set up.
Like a year later, he did make it sound like it was like pretty recent though. He's like, "Oh, I heard you just got married. Congrats!" Like that kind of thing. It wasn't like
Right.
a congratulations on getting married. Like it was like years down the line, and he was seeing him for the first time. I thought, but you could be right.
Yeah, I mean it's nebulous enough, and the time flow in comics is that
But I
typical temporal
appreciate
paradox I
Hickman
like to talk about.
taking the time to make us not feel like it's like 100 years in the future, maybe.
Right. Right.
He does put it
Sure.
in the general area, which I
Right.
like.
Right.
And it's not taking place in the past, which is helpful. Sabretooth is like standing on the street corner holding a copy of today's newspaper and thumbs up.
Right. Anyone want to throw any final thoughts on House of X?
I took it off my poll, and then I read our preview copy, and I put it back on my poll.
Cool.
That's so I'm just saying it's something I consider worth buying. Like I thought it was really well done.
Nice. All right. Well, moving forward to our DC book for this week, we've got Batman: The Curse of the White Knight #1. This is coming to you from Sean Murphy. Of course, this is the sequel to the actually incredibly well-selling Batman White Knight from October 2017 to March 2018. A 6-issue miniseries that, if I was to condense it real quick, like Joker finds a way to cure himself and becomes this prominent figure in Gotham and kind of forces Batman into the role of the antagonist until they end up having to work together at the end. I don't know. I wasn't into it, to be honest with you, and I'm not super into this new one. I read it last night, and I really don't remember the plot. Like, legitimately cannot recall the plot of this book. There's stuff happening. I remember moments, but not an overall not an overall thread to be able to even recap it. Nick, do you think you could recap it in a couple of sentences, maybe?
So, outside of the first one, this one's kind of thrown in with the Joker's perspective, and he's visiting his original cell in Arkham, and he pretty much creates this new path forward where he's supposed to get with or to go against Batman and show everybody what's wrong and everything like that. It's also trying to introduce Azrael, and they diverge halfway through and go into that. But ultimately, this one follows the Joker setting up this new mystery for Batman to follow, along with Gordon's help. And that's generally what you get out of the first issue, is the establishment to this new mystery after the events of the first one that puts the Joker where he's at now. And from that, you don't really get a lot else. This is super introductory stuff, and you can tell they were trying to push Azrael, so they get away from the Joker scheme after introducing what he does with Arkham and what he's trying to do with the chess that ties back into pre-Gotham days that were the first 2 pages in this book, and that's Laffy, the old tale that Batgirl knew. So they kind of go into that and try to tie it in, but it's an introductory issue for a new mystery, and it's predicated on the things that happened in the first volume, so it acts as a direct sequel, and from that you're able to kind of understand more. But that's generally the gist of what's going on.
So what did you think of it? You didn't read the first volume, right?
No, I tried to, but it seemed like something I should love. It really did. It was marketed under.
It really wants to be.
Yeah, it is trying, and I feel like when Volume 1 came out, it was marketed as this concept of we've swapped the roles. The dichotomy of the classic Batman versus Joker has been reversed, and now Joker is essentially the good guy and Batman is essentially the bad guy. And that's kind of not what happened. What played out really is very different, and Volume 2 elaborates on that difference. Mm-hmm. So if I was sold on the concept, I may not have just been sold on the execution, because that's really not what they followed through with. And Volume 2 is a continuation of that. So if you were super into what Volume 1 actually did, this one might be up your alley, but it's an Elseworlds tale under the black label with DC. So you can kind of you can get out of it what you want. And I know they're trying to do the adult theme with these black label books, but this one, it felt like it was supposed to be a continuation of the first volume. And the best part about it is probably the artwork. I really like the design of Batman, actually, the tall collar and the shorter ears, a little bit of knife action on the waist. It was pretty cool, not bad, but it's not enough. The book feels scattered to me. It was, like Cody said, it was awfully forgettable, but it was trying really hard to do something super cool and super badass, but it was just another one of these books with a strong concept, you feel like, behind it, and then you get into the book and it's just not really what you were thinking it is. And it plays on the twists of the first volume, so if you're not caught up on those, you're really not going to follow along with what the Joker's doing or what's going on with the Napier Initiative and why Dick looks like he does. There's a lot of stuff that you're going to be super clueless on, and unlike the House of X that we just talked about, this one's not accessible. It's not something that you just want to pick up and jump right into thinking that since it's a number 1, you'll know what's going on. This, not like, Gerard Way's recent Doom Patrol, he labeled it as a number 1 when it functioned more like issue 13 or 14, I can't remember exactly, of his overall series. This felt like it functioned more like an issue 7 or something like that. It it was a continuation of that story. And the best part, like I said, was definitely the art, and Azrael shined in that. He had nude ass body, but they really pulled off some pretty cool story with his thing, and I liked that. But it's not enough to keep me coming back. The first volume didn't do it, and this one's kind of more of the same. So if you're super into it, you might like it. If not, you're not going to get much out of it. John, what do you think?
So, the first volume of Batman White Knight, me and Cody were talking earlier, and it's funny because it seems like it's like universally loved until you look for people who actually read it. Like it's the breakout hit that nobody ever talks about. Like Mr. Miracle, if you say something about Mr. Miracle anywhere, you'll get 20 people saying, "Oh, I love it. It was great. It was it." You talk about this book, nothing. Like this new arc. So the first arc was, elements of Batman Eternal. It was elements of Batman Incorporated and Nightfall and some other stuff. This one is kind of along the lines of a Dark Knight, Dark City by Peter Milligan meets a Court of the Owls meets meets a
Gates of Gotham.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. It's really interesting in some regards, but it's really not in most regards. I don't think that many of the themes from the first arc are played into enough for it to feel like a worthwhile continuation, but I also don't feel like enough new themes are introduced for it to feel like a series that stands on its own. It really just doesn't impress me in any regard. The Joker looked really good, but otherwise I'm not really a big fan of his art style in a lot of places. It's interesting that they definitively said it's John Paul Valley, but it seems more like Michael Lane's backstory with the ex-soldier and stuff, and an actual devout, I think he seemed like he was Catholic, whereas John Paul Valley, I don't think was overtly religious before being activated as an agent of Saint Dumas. So it's interesting the way they're playing Azrael. It seems like the Azraels may be mixed together, which is interesting as when did we? Well, I guess we have the current Azrael who was introduced in Batman and Robin Eternal, and was in the background of the detective a lot.
And he's also in Justice League Odyssey.
I was gonna say it. Your favorite book. He's got a space cult or some nonsense now. He's doing what he's been doing, but now it's in space. Space. It's in space. I do feel like a lot of the appeal of the previous series was in fan service moments, which I don't feel like this issue has a lot of. So maybe he was trying to move away from that, like stuff like that. We can't use a digital Batmobile. We got to use one that runs on analog devices. And so Gordon's driving around in the '89 Batmobile, and it was a big moment. He's using the Bat Humvee from No Man's Land is what Dick was driving. Mm-hmm. Stuff like that is exciting for longtime Batman fans, but at the same time, like, is that what your entire series is based on, is moments like that? And, like, I vaguely remember the first series, but I couldn't tell you most of it. I do feel like it was a massive mistake laying out exactly what Alfred said in the letter given to him in the first series, because that was actually a really great moment in the first series. Was when Alfred died, he gave Bruce a note, and it was never said what was in that note. And I thought that was actually really, leaving it. Was that
the lettering they used for that note? I was just
really hard to read.
Yeah, and they set it up against this color in the background that was just made it impossible to distinguish. Like, I was super close to the book trying to figure out what's going on.
It's like post Batman Year One. Almost all of the inner narration in all the Batman books tried to make it look like it was coming out of a handwritten journal
Right.
for a few
Right.
years. God, I hate that era. Trying to read on those old newsprint pages and it's like barely legible and it gets all smudged. Oh,
It was
it was like,
painful.
yeah. But laying out what that letter said actually kind of annoyed me because stuff like that honestly works best when it's left vague. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
there's nothing to be said.
it was almost an amateurish move, I think. Like
Hmm?
it
It didn't add anything to the story.
it didn't add anything to the story, and it actually detracts from the story that he laid out. Like that's not being able to recognize that that's what that will do is why it feels amateurish to me. Like it's
Totally.
I kind of think I know what I'm doing, except maybe sometimes you don't, and that's fine. Like I don't expect everybody to be a fucking Warren Ellis out there, um, but yeah, it just detracted from the overall book to me. Like I did some digging on the numbers, right? In the modern era of comics, sales for number one issues typically are the peak that series will get to. Number two is usually, I mean, anywhere from like a 20 to like a 50% drop in sales. What we see with White Knight, the original, the volume one, number one sold around like 69,000 copies, which is pretty good, but not amazing. But and then number two had a little bit of a dip, but then at number three it started to go up. So by the end, this was nearly an 80,000 copy a month book, which is almost unheard of in today's market. So I mean, to me, that
And it
indicates that
retained value. I actually flipped my singles for it because they were going for decent money.
Yeah,
I think I sold 1 through 8 for like $60.
right. So I mean, this is a series that people did enjoy, but to your point, John, like I don't know any of them. I don't know a single person. I've not even looking around on the various comic groups on Facebook today. I didn't see anybody that had a positive reaction to this issue that wasn't saying first series was garbage, this series is garbage. What a surprise! And it's just like, I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's a little extreme. I don't think it was garbage, but it wasn't good.
Like
But like,
books increase on that level out of word of mouth, so that positive word of mouth was coming from somewhere, but
Right.
it's hard to find.
Yeah, it's a really bizarre case. Like
It is.
I don't think I've ever seen anything like this.
Like, I think the concept sold better than the actual content of the book. Word got out of the concept that this was a reverse role of that dichotomy, and people thought that might take off. And you probably get some speculation in it, and you get people who, feel like it's something important for DC that they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So they scoop it up and they say it's great because the concept is Joker is the good guy, Batman's the bad guy.
well, I will say on the speculation front, those later issues, as I mentioned, had those kind of fan service moments, stuff like the '89 Batmobile, and that did drive up sales some because it was, the first official time the '89 Batmobile was in a comic in actually being driven. Like stuff like that does drive speculation,
Yeah.
The '89 Batmobile is a confirmed Batmobile in canon, shit like that, even though it's not in canon. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
that's what they'll latch on to stuff like that, and then put it up on eBay and be like key issue.
Yeah.
Third appearance of Toyman.
Like,
Toyman 2 in 1975.
I mean, I read this book within the last 24 hours. I forgot about the John Paul Valley stuff, like entirely. Until you started talking about it, I was like, oh yeah, that happened. That was a thing. I don't know. This was to me the most forgettable. And I'm actively reading Tom King's Batman. This was the most forgettable Batman story that I've read in a very long time. And it's a bummer to say, because I mean, I don't know. It should be amazing, but it's not. It just isn't. It is what it is. It'll still sell probably about 80,000 copies, I imagine, maybe upwards to 90. We'll see when the sales charts come out next month. But I think that's enough. Batman Curse of the White Knight, don't you guys?
I'm
Nope.
done talking about it. Don't buy it.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it in any capacity. But a book that I would recommend, Archie versus Predator, Volume 2, Number 1. This is coming to us from a combined effort of Archie and Dark Horse. Alex DeCampi, the writer of Volume 1, is back, and this time he's brought with him Robert Hack, who was the artist on Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. So in Volume 1, if you did not read Volume 1, because it's kind of, again, this isn't particularly accessible if you didn't read Volume 1. In Volume 1, which was really drawn in kind of a classic Archie, 1960s style, but with, I don't know, more sexual innuendo in the dialogue.
The girls were drawn a little racier too. I remember my wife got on. She saw Betty and Veronica when they were doing the swimsuit contest, and I think it was issue 2. And she was like, "What are you reading?" And she was getting on me for like looking at girly pics. I'm like, Archie is too risque.
Right.
No, it isn't. It's Archie.
So in Volume 1, the kids go on vacation during summer. Betty encounters a cursed jaguar god dagger, and a predator shows up. Right, so they go home.
Was nonsense, wasn't it? Was it actually involved, or was it just that they had a knife and there was a predator?
That's a good question. It's not super clear, but what is clear is that this is a juvenile predator that fell in love with Betty and Veronica, right? So, it's doing its predatory things, but it's not doing them to Betty and Veronica. And I mean, this thing slaughters everybody. Like, blows Pop Tate's head off, rips out Sabrina's spine. Like, I mean, it's in that classic art style, but it's just incredibly
snacks.
Yeah, poor Jughead. But I mean, yeah, so it slaughters everyone, and at the end, Veronica uses one of Hiram Lodge's proprietary technologies to give this predator that's in love with them Archie's look after Archie's been killed. So we're left at the end of that first volume with Betty, Veronica, and Predator Archie. Then we move into Volume 2, and that's the case we've got. Everyone still dead, except for Betty, Veronica, Predator, Archie. And we kind of move forward from there. And I don't really want to spoil the story too much, because it's got a really creative sense of kind of a meta commentary on, intercompany crossovers and, kind of properties that reinvent themselves every so often, which, I mean, we can clearly say Archie is one of the best companies at completely reinventing themselves. If you're reading any of the stuff that's come out since 2008, 2009, this is not your grandparents' Archie comics, or my grandparents. I guess it's like Nick's like great grandparents, but whatever.
Ouch.
Man, you're talking to your boss.
I've thoroughly enjoyed this book. I thought that the shift in artwork was really pleasing. I thought that the artist did a really good job in delivering this scary horror tone, but with this edge of lightheartedness to it that's just delightful to me. Like, I loved the first volume. I loved the first issue of this one. What about you, JJ?
I'm second all 3 times today. Look at me go. I thought it was pretty good. I was actually hoping for something more geared from the Predator's perspective after getting Archie in the first crossover, and so I was a little bit disappointed we didn't get that, and we kind of got more of the same. But what we got before was very, very good, so that's fine. It was just a little like, well, they did one with Archie's perspective, maybe they'll do another one with Predator, because it's crossover.
Yeah,
so
I thought the same thing too.
Like if they did Archie versus Predator and then Predator versus Archie kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just the teensiest bit disappointed, but I'm not holding that against the book. That's not their fault. That's just my fault for thinking that, I guess. But I thought the book was really interesting. I thought it played a little bit into the term that Jeff Johns recently coined, the metaverse.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it had a bit of that feel. I loved that long episode you and Matt had talking about that, Cody, by the way, when I was doing stuff. But I thought it was interesting the way they kind of play with the idea of a multiverse, featuring all the different incarnations of Archie over the years, you know, and even now with the kind of the new, what you might call the new Archie, even though Archie never necessarily left, but, you know, you got like Archie 1941 and stuff like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the horror Archieverse, and then the Riverdale Archieverse, which just seems like they kind of teased on in this issue. And even like the Netflix, you know, the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina and stuff like that, like they have a lot of ground they could tread just going between different incarnations of the characters. And that really, really interests me. And it also really, really interests me that Predator might cut a swath of destruction through all of those. And that sounds like a hell of a good time. I'm more of a Predator fan than an Archie fan, if you weren't aware. So I guess I'm rooting for Predator. Although Predator pretty much always wins, which is, I guess, why I'm rooting for Predator. Even when he died, he still kind of won.
Yeah, solid. That's fair.
What do you think about it, Nick?
Oh, it was good. And out of the 3 books that we've talked about so far, House of X made me excited for the future, but still not that excited to dig into what's been going on in the past 10 years. Curse of the White Knight made me want to read nothing more of that series. Just be done with it. This one was actually interesting enough to make me want to go back and thumb through Volume 1. And I did it right before the show, and it was super, super fun to go through it. I kind of just skimmed through it and made my way through the first 3/4 of it. And the artwork is great. It's super violent, and it made this issue make a lot more sense. So, because they throw you right into it, but it's successful enough to make you interested to the point to where you want to see more of it. And even for people who pick up Volume 2, they're probably gonna be interested enough to say, what is going on with this? And I got to go back and see what's going on. And it's a hell of a story. My God. So
the singles aren't terribly expensive. I think because I got them as a set a couple years after the fact. I think it was like $12 for all 4. So
nice.
It wasn't horrible.
Yeah, and I think this approach, or this quote unquote new direction for Archie comics that they've been pursuing for a little bit is right up my alley. I love the horror approach that they're doing. So a lot of their stories have kind of done well for me. I thought the Blossom 666 one was particularly fun that just wrapped up. But this Predator falls right in line with that. So it feels like a natural fit after what they've been doing. And they find a way to make it work. It meshes in a really interesting, unique way. You look at it and you think, no way should that work. But it fucking works. It's crazy. And I think that's just a testament to this creative team and what Archie Comics is doing. They seem to have found their stride with this approach, and they're telling really cool stories. The one complaint I had might not be an actual complaint, but it was the use of emojis for the language of the Predator. It's a bit of a stretch to use emojis as a universal translator, especially after the work that has gone into creating and establishing this unique Predator language that has been used so much. So they kind of ignored all that, and now Predators speak in emojis because, 1, you can understand what they're getting at, and 2, they're not just, illustrated figures moving around doing nothing.
What Nick is referring to is previous Predator comics do have a written language that is translatable.
There's been a lot of work that went into establishing their language and their written form of it. And I understand why you wouldn't want to use that in this book. I mean, nobody's going to know what's going on, really. It's a tough medium to work in with comics and something like the Predator. So it was inventive to use emojis, but it worked because it was in an Archie book. Any other
Yeah.
book, I don't think the use of emojis would have worked. But
Oh, for sure.
somehow
Yeah.
this had a charm to it, even with the Predators, that it just worked. And I think it was just another level that this book found some way in some universe to work. And going into it, I never checked out Volume 1 because I saw it on the shelves and I thought cute and then kept walking.
Oh, really? When I saw it, I was like, I gotta read. I have to have this. Like, it was literally the first thought I had when I saw the singles. I was like,
I enjoy the properties on their own, but it's kind of like the Green Lantern Star Trek crossover. Love both Green Lantern and Star Trek. Huge fan. Cared nothing about the crossover. What am I going to get out of that?
And
I still haven't read it, but it is on my to-do list. That one and the Planet of the Apes one. Both of those, like, it's totally organically makes sense to me that those two would meet, and that's the kind of thing I like in a crossover, is if they make it so, like Booster Gold and the Flintstones. Booster Gold's a time traveler. Works for me. That's all I need to know.
Yep.
And maybe with Archie versus Predator, they use AVP, and I've only known that as Alien versus Predator, so that's still throwing me for a loop. And I get that's a nod between, like what you said, the meta narrative on corporate crossovers like this. I think that's just a little nod to the other crossover that they've done. These types of franchises work really well for that type of idea. And maybe this is a sign that I should go check out some more of these corporate crossover type comics, but
a lot of them are really fun.
Yeah, I had no idea. I wouldn't have expected it, and part of the cool thing of this show is being able to jump into books that you would otherwise never read. And this was one of them that I thought, nice. I'm happy I read it, and I'm actually going to go back and check out the other one because it's worthwhile. And what more do you want from a book? Like, that is enjoyment. That's the entertainment factor that this book is 100% going for. And they nailed it. So kudos to everybody over there, Archie Comics, and with the Predator franchise. That's good shit. Cody?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously I've already raved about the book. JJ and I proposed it almost a week ago, and everyone was like, "What? No, I'm not reading that."
I was one of them.
Yes. So
I was like,
so
really?
y'all are welcome. JJ and I are going to be doing a joint review on this series. He'll be taking it from the Predator standpoint, and I'll be taking it from the Archie standpoint. So you guys can keep an eye out. Keep an eye out for that coming soon on www.comic-watch.com.
Hey, Cody, real quick. What would you consider your favorite intercompany crossover? Just right. I know, right off the top of your head. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. I was actually just thinking about how great the Green Lantern Space Ghost one shot was.
Oh, there you go.
That was really, really exceptional. I kind of anticipated it veering towards being silly and goofy, but it was actually a pretty poignant story. So, I mean, that's just off the top of my head. I'm sure that there are others that I would say at another time. Oh, Batman Deathblow.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Azzarello and Bermejo, like, you can't go wrong with that team up.
Absolutely. I was thinking, I really like Batman and Judge Dredd Die Laughing is probably one of my faves. There's also Batman Aliens, which is the only time Ron Mars has written an Aliens book, and he created me and Trey's favorite, the Cayman Alien, which is a Cayman alien. It's like 3 times the size, and it's built like an alligator. It's pretty rad.
Nice.
Like one of the only ones that I've liked in the past has been Batman Spawn. I thought those characters worked well together. I know it was, it's cheesy fun, but I wanted to see those together, so I got what I wanted out of that one.
Batman had a string of really good ones in the 90s. There were a couple Batman Punishers. There were 3 Batman Predator crossovers, all of which are really good. I think there's 2 Batman Alien ones and then a JLA Aliens one as well. And then there is also Batman Daredevil, Batman Spider-Man. I think there's 2 Batman, and then there's 2 Batman Punishers. Cause there's one with 3. Because there's one before Nightfall, one after Nightfall where Punisher meets Asbats, and then one after Nightfall because Punisher was big back then.
Yeah, right.
Sorry to derail the conversation.
No. One last one I want to mention: the classic Wildcats Stormwatch Aliens crossover that Warren Ellis did back in, what was that,
That actually ended up
1997?
being canonically important.
Canonically important, right? Like that was the issue that really launched the volume 2 of. Wait, was that? No, it was at the end of volume 2 of Stormwatch. It launched the Authority. The fallout from that led to the Authority.
Yeah.
So, yes. Nick, what have you been reading and what are you looking forward to?
Let's see. Continuing from last week, I have continued the Valiant binge, and everything's still brilliant. Can't recommend it enough, but I won't delve into that once again. Just go check it out for yourself and read it. Read the Harbinger Wars in its entirety. Do yourself a favor. Read a good book. Our reviewer Kenneth recently said, when you read this book and you don't like it, ask yourself, why don't you like fun? And that's what you need to ask yourself. So Valiant is fun, badass comics. But recently I checked out Vault's Sarah and the Royal Stars, and you can catch a review coming soon at comicwatch.com. It was a surprisingly great sword and sorcery book that delved into a mythology and a cultural status around these characters. And instead of building yet another Game of Thrones replica with all these competing nations and wars and all that, this one's character driven. So it's a nice change of pace to focus on Sarah and what she's doing for this country and this kingdom. And it's a super interesting story with beautiful artwork, and another one from Vault that's just not talked about enough. I know they recently tapped a director for a film translation of Heathen, their other female-led sword and sorcery books, and this one feels a bit more fantastic or whimsical in the use of mythology and their narrative elements, but it's still a really great book, and it's complex enough to want to, or to make you want to keep reading, but it's not too dense where you're just thrown off by it. It's super inviting. It's a great book. What I'm looking forward to is probably Spawn 299 that drops next week. It's going to be a slower week because of release schedules in these publishers. I was scrolling through the list and just not a lot.
Yeah, it's because it's the 5th Wednesday.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just one of those situations, but Spawn 299 is the issue right before the historic 300 and the record-breaking 301 that has been hyped up time and time again, and we're finally reaching it, so that is what I'm excited for most. John, what about you?
Second again.
You picked a one.
I picked a good show to show up to. Well, I actually started reading. I was inspired by Nick. I think Nick was one trade paperback ahead of me. He started reading The Valiant, and that got me going. So I asked, again, our Valiant guy, Kenneth, where to start with Valiant, and started reading directly with the 2012 relaunch of Exo Manowar, which was followed by Bloodshot, then Harbinger, then Shadow Man, and all 4 series have been amazing. I'm about 5 trade paperbacks into all 4 series, and all are still just top notch. I'm getting to the point where a couple spin-off series are starting to launch. I have not read them yet, but I'm looking really forward to Eternal Warrior, which is probably going to be the next one I'm going to nail. And then, but they've all just been great. Like, Harbinger Wars is how a crossover should work. And then the fallout after Harbinger Wars in Harbinger and Bloodshot is, again, how, like, stuff happens in Harbinger or stuff that happens in Harbinger Wars actually matters to the series. It's not like they get sucked away for a crossover and then 3 issues later everything's back to normal. Like stuff from Harbinger Wars, especially Bloodshot. I'm 10 issues later in Bloodshot and it's still stuff that's affecting the series. It's super interesting the way that they've got it laid out. And let's see, Harbinger is written by Joshua Dysart, who I'm just becoming a weirdly huge fan of, considering I don't see a ton of work he does, but everything I've read from him I've liked. And Robert Venditti writes Exo Manowar. It's great. Just I can't recommend, as Nick said, I can't recommend it enough. Also, I wanted to look through some more Hickman books to kind of investigate for some themes, and so I started his Fantastic Four run and read about 10 issues of his Fantastic Four today. It's really good. It's really, really good. I highly recommend it. I read it on Marvel Unlimited. Oh, I'm reading all the Valiant on Comixology Unlimited. So those are both subscription services that you can get, and Comixology Unlimited so far has not had a trade paperback I've looked for. Like for Valiant, they have all of, like, if you want to comprehensively read Valiant, they do a 30-day free trial. Like you can read a ton of comics in 30 days if you try. Trust me on that.
You can get through a few years of Valiant stuff just in that 30 days. And from that point, you're going to be hooked. Just 100%.
Yeah, I'm definitely keeping the Comixology Unlimited. I like it a lot. It's a good service. As for what I'm looking forward to, I'm really curious what Powers of 10 is going to entail. I took Cody's thing he's looking for away.
No, you didn't.
And, well, that's it. Doomsday Clock's never coming, Cody. Neither is Shazam. I don't even know what's going out next week.
So I haven't been reading a whole lot this week because I've been binge watching, catching up on all of last season's CW shows. So I caught up on Arrow, I caught up on Flash, and now I'm catching up on Black Lightning. And I gotta say, like, after not this past year, but the previous run of seasons were really disappointing for the CW. This current batch that just wrapped up has actually been really strong. So I've been enjoying all of those series. For what I'm looking forward to, Captain America 12, the end of the Captain of Nothing arc. Like, I love a fifth week. I love a fifth Wednesday in a month, because the only books you get are books that are unnecessary, like, you know, random throwaway annuals, or maybe they'll have like a series of one-shot crossovers or whatever, and super critical books like Captain America 12, like Batman Who Laughs #7, like Powers of X #1. So I mean, like, it makes your reading list really easy, because the things that are important are very obvious, and then there's just a bunch of fun stuff.
Out. Yeah.
What's that?
It cuts the fluff out.
Right.
Like the books that aren't releasing, like the ongoings you're just reading because they're ongoing and you're reading the rest of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Flash.
Exactly. Yeah, you'll never see an issue of Flash release on a fifth week. Well, maybe when Flash is good, but yeah. So I'm excited about this upcoming week. There's a lot of good stuff. Not a lot of good stuff, but some really, really good stuff. I really can't wait to see where Coates is taking Cap following this prison breakout and prison stint, and maybe we'll find out who Dryad is, because that is just killing me. I'm out of guesses. I don't know, and I want to know really bad. So, Cap 12, that's my book of the week. And I think that's it for our show. So don't forget, Arby's not here. I got to do the thing. Don't forget to check us out at www.comic-watch.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Facebook at The Comic Watchers Show, and Comic Watch on Twitter at Comic Watch Ace, and at C Watchers Show. You can find us on Spotify, SoundCloud, Podbean,
Stitcher,
iTunes.
Podcast Addict. If you like podcasts, look there, and if we're not there, you let us know, and we'll try and go there. Although, do not ask me to go to Castbox. I tried. It's really hard. I'm not going there again.
But everywhere else we will go. Tell us.
Everywhere but Castbox.
So we're everywhere. We're worldwide.
Except
We're
Castbox.
really excited about whatever the next big thing is going to be. You can find it right at our website. And that is it for our show this week. See you later, everybody.
Bye.